Ask and ye shall receive. These are my version of vampires in my upcoming book, Branches. First and foremost, within my story, a born vampire is an extremely rare phenomenon, something that only happens maybe every handful of centuries. Second, although I really wanted to add this because it'd be super funny, my vampire fangs do not have straws. One of the few physical changes to occur when somebody is infected with vampirism is essentially the muscles of their throat and mouth become a lot stronger, which, when puncturing something, they can suck the blood out. Also, to get this out of the way, my version of vampires can walk into the sun, however, it does have its drawbacks. The first being that they lose their vampiric strength. The second one being, in order to enter sunlight, they actively have to fight their own instincts. Now, evolutionarily speaking, of course, vampires would be predisposed to the dark because that's when their prey, aka humans, would be the most vulnerable and easy to hunt. It's kind of like how you have to fight your own instincts if you do something wild, like, go out into the middle of the ocean or go out into the woods at night by yourself. While these things can be done by people, for a lot of them it is a psychological battle to amp up to doing them, and a lot of people see doing those actions as inherently foolish. Another thing about my vampires is the decay of humanity. Essentially, things like morality, empathy, and sympathy will go to the wayside. This is another evolutionary trait because you have transformed into something that is hunting what you used to be. Having depressed empathy and sympathy makes it easier to consume human blood. However, this can be combated with, actively being around humanity and participating in society, and or doing what the Anora family, aka the vampiric family in my story, does, which is consume animal blood. Now, one of the reasons that my family consumes animal blood in the story is because human blood has the ability to pass on diseases to vampires. Now, while the vampires will not die of said disease, it can still make them sick. This is something that Matthias and Arya, the father and mother of the vampire family, found out because they were turned during the bubonic plague. And they found that although feeding on humans caused them to get sick from the plague, them feeding on plague-infected rats caused no adverse side effects. Vampires in my story also have a tenuous grasp on time. Think of all the small little biological things your body does to alert you that time has passed. Normally you can see this with, hair growth. Vampires do not have this, and in order for them to kind of understand the passage of time, they have to be with humanity. My version of vampires also have a venom within them that is paralytic and can be fatal. It essentially works through the body, paralyzing all extremities until finally seizing the heart. The only cure for that is a full blood transfusion. When I mentioned that we have biological tells to let us know that time is passing that vampires do not, I am not stating that if they cut off all their hair, it just doesn't grow back. I can see how people are confused, but I'm also confused how you're confused. So to clarify, we have the ability to, grow fingernails, grow hair, grow facial hair, develop spots, wrinkles, all of these things that show on our body that time is passing. Vampires, however, do not experience this phenomena, and it is one of the reasons that time affects them differently than us, and it's harder for them to tell that time is passing. That being said, though, I do have a character within my story named Hannah. The scene phase is in full swing in the setting of my story, and she is super into it, and she loves cutting off her hair and dyeing it and putting in crimps and stripes. However, after 24 hours, her hair is back to how it originally was when she was initially turned. So yeah, if a vampire shaves their head, it's gonna grow back to however long it was when they were first bitten. And I should mention, within my universe, the reason that born vampires are kept so vague is because they are incredibly rare, and this is because vampires are solitary creatures. Normally, the only time you will see two vampires together is if one is a maker and the other is its fledgling, and makers normally only stick around long enough to teach a fledgling how to properly drink before they dip out. Vampires are very territorial and normally live in high-populated areas because it's easier to hunt there. And while there have been instances of two vampires being to overcome their territorial instincts and form a vampire-born child, born vampires are a lot more animalistic than turned. This is because they have no ties to humanity or morality at all, and most turn out to be more bestial than sentient. Like I said, within my universe, the humanity of vampires will normally decay over time. This is an evolutionary thing to make it easier to hunt people. I cannot stress this enough. The vampires that my main character meets are an exception, not the rule. The Anora family lives in a coven, they eat off animals, and they have been able to sustain most of their humanity. It's one of the reasons why the outer world of vampires does not like them. And yes, this will be conflict in future books. Also, before you ask, yes, hybrids can be a thing, but there's not a lot of research on them because not a lot of things are hybridizing and living to tell about the hybridization. Vampires can only drink blood from the living. If they drink blood from something that's dead, they gonna get real sick and die, possibly. Like, it depends on how much they drink. Like, if they only drink a little, then they're probably gonna have, like, vomits and bad tummy times. But, like, if they drink, like, a few gulps, they're dying. So this is important to teach a fledgling how to properly drink. Like I mentioned in the video this comment is from, vampires are primarily solitary. About 90% of them are normally on their own doing their own shit. Vampires in my universe are also incredibly rare, only about 150 to 200 in existence. And I should say there's a disparity on how many there really are because some of them have become so animalistic that they have lost their sentience, which makes some people wonder if they're even vampires anymore or if they're just beasts. So, the times you will see two vampires together, it is a fledgling and a maker, and a fledgling must be taught how to drink correctly, otherwise they'll starve and or go into a blood frenzy. A blood frenzy occurs when a fledgling doesn't know how to properly latch on and drain a being of their blood. This is the best analogy I've come up with it. Brain. So, imagine you got a toddler and you got a Capri Sun. Now, obviously, the correct thing to do is to take the straw and poke the hole and give it to the toddler and let them drink. And, over time, the toddler will learn how to put the straw in themselves. This is what a maker is supposed to do with a fledgling. However, sometimes a maker is lackadaisical, so instead of putting the straw in, they'll just poke a hole and hope the kid figures it out. And while some kids will learn, like, oh, if I latch onto the hole, I can get the juice and quench my thirst, others will end up spilling it all over the damn place and be thirsty. Then you have the makers that just throw the Capri Sun at the toddler and then fucking head out and leave the kid with the bag. Which normally ends in the kid going thirsty and or the kid popping the damn thing and getting it everywhere. Replace toddler with fledgling, replace Capri Sun with human being. So if a fledgling is lackadaisically taught and or abandoned, normally what will happen is they will become so thirsty that they just start ripping people apart trying to get as much live blood as they can. Most die because they drink dead blood, or other vampires see them fucking up their steeds and possibly alerting humanity and fucking kill them. I should mention my main character Silas's original family were murdered by a blood-frenzied vampire that had to be put down by the rest of the Anora family.